And we are live, Senators.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Vermont State Senate Committee on Institutions. I am Joe Benning, your host for this afternoon's events, also chair of this committee. And to introduce the remainder of the committee, going across my screen, Senator Mazza from Colchester Grand Isle, Senator Parent from Franklin County, Senator McCormick from Windsor County, and Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans. Commissioner Schneider, welcome back to Senate Institutions.
Thank you,
Before you begin, I'm going to give my daily spiel here about YouTube land. Much to my surprise, we actually have folks watching on YouTube land. And so in order to try to make things as easy as possible for anybody that has never been in the committee process or is learning for the first time all about their government, I try to keep conversations at a very easy level for people to understand. Sometimes you and I will get engaged in conversation that you and I both know all about, but there's a lot of people apparently out there watching who haven't the foggiest idea what we're talking about. So if you hear me interrupting your testimony as we go, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of X, Y, and Z for the purpose of our viewing audience. When you begin your testimony, I would ask you to tell us, number one, who you are, number two, what you do for a living and how you fit into the government process. And from there, we'll get into the substance of why you're here today. The topic of discussion is technically Forest Parks and Recreation's report on the capital fund balances. And I understand, Commissioner, you also have a proposed joint resolution pertaining to state lands, which we'll explain in a moment. But I am very much interested in an update on the capital fund balances with respect to your division. And at that, I think I have covered all of my basics. So Commissioner Schneider, welcome back to Senate Institutions. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greetings, Senators all. Happy to be back with you all here
Mike.
today. Yes. Good afternoon, Senator. And so for the record, Michael Snyder, I'm Commissioner of the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. And I've brought along, by way of introduction, a couple of key staff members here, and I'm excited first I know most of you knew that our State Parks Director, Craig Whipple, was director for a long time, technically, officially considered a legend in the industry across the country. He retired last year, and I'm really pleased to introduce to you all our new State Parks Director, Nate McKean, who's on your screen here, where we had a national search. We had applicants from nearly every state, really an impressive array, and Nate rose to the top. Nate being a former chief of park operations here for us, began his career with us as a park manager, one of our busiest parks. He actually did some time in our forestry division as a district manager. So, a long career of service in the department, and earned his stripes. And we're really thrilled to introduce Nate to you all, who's been, Nate, almost a year now on the job as State Parks Director.
Thanks, right. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, that's right. About a year.
So you'll be, over time, you'll hear more from Nate as State Parks Director, and because our state park system is a big part of our capital program, and that's a big part of our interactions with you. So more from Nate in time. And our old friend here, who's not that old, sorry, Frank, but Frank Spalding, I brought along as well. He's our Parks Projects Manager, kind of our lead guy on keeping track of our capital allocations and implementation spending, particularly on the parks side of things, state park side of our operations. But Frank is also very helpful throughout the department in a multitude of roles, but in particular in our capital program. So Frank's here as well. Thank you, Frank. I may rely on these folks heavy when you get into detailed questions on down to the penny. That will be Frank. So to your intro, Senator Benning, I guess is it important for the audience to understand? I say I'm here as commissioner with high-level staff, from the department. Is that sufficient to know where we stand in the order of things? That my job is to oversee this department that's well named: forests, state parks, and outdoor recreation. We have divisions in each of those spaces, if you will, and consider it one of the plum assignments in all of state government, frankly. And we're very proud of our mission and the way we approach it, and what we provide for the state of Vermont in each of those three areas: forests, forestry, state parks, and outdoor recreation.
For our youngest viewers, Michael, are you one of the people that wears one of those cool green hats with the state seal on it?
Yes, that's us.
And he does a great job too. One of our great commissioners.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that.
Nate, hang around for a few minutes, because when Michael is done giving us all the substance, we'll get you in here to give the official grilling from institutions. But in the meantime, I'll just offer your condolences for having to work with Commissioner Schneider.
Appreciate that. Well said.
That's great. So indeed, we are, with the introductions, the background sort of done. I'll dive in here. We are here following up on our annual report to you on sort of capital fund balances, unspent balances. Delivered a short memo trying to boil it down for you. You know, I know how much background is important to understand. We receive, you've been very good to us in understanding the importance of capital allocations in maintaining this extensive park system, in particular state forests and other assets for public benefit. And so it's large, it's complex, things like, you know, how many miles of underground piping for wastewater and water systems? 40 miles of underground facilities, 55 developed parks, which means the campgrounds with water systems and buildings, et cetera. It's complicated. They're also historic. And so with, you know, largely originating in the CCC era, and then another pulse of activity in the 50s and 60s, principally, no matter how you slice it, they're old, in some cases historic. And so that brings challenges to anyone who owns a home and knows about maintenance and upkeep. Those are our challenges across a very extensive business proposition within state government. That is the state park system. We're appreciative of the capital allocations. We have a very carefully planned list of projects broken into major maintenance and reconstruction, mid-scale, and sort of ongoing kind of things. And we try to spread the allocation across those buckets, and then do so across geography, and spend this money on through local contractors, putting Vermonters to work, improving our facilities and our amenities and our attractions, maintaining historical assets, and staying modern and moving towards renewable energy and accessibility for disabled Americans, all kinds of kind of dimensions and directions that we go in with this, all resulting, frankly, through these investments, Nate's team and great leadership and managing of a 400-person seasonal workforce. You know, over 1 million visitors in a state with 625,000 of us. That's significant. 60% increase, 40% increase in visitation over the last decade or so. Historic visitation over the last year or two in certain parks, breaking all-time records. And this year, the 5th highest visitation ever. It's paying off, is what I'm saying. And then there's another, with many benefits, and there's this whole other level of indirect spending related to parks visitation, nearly $100 million pegged at in that, you know, these little economic drivers that we create. So your investments through the capital allocations in state parks and other state assets through our people in that kind of an approach is complicated and successful. And so there are a couple of challenges that are, because we're trying to do construction in a busy park, it means we're limited in terms of seasons and when we can get things done. We are now facing supply chain issues, as everyone else is, spikes in construction costs, workforce issues. So I'm foreshadowing a couple of explanations of why we're not maybe where we would always want to be with our commitment to spend down within a 2-year time and get this money out the door and implemented. There's a few of those kinds of issues that are at work here, but I think generally speaking, as you'll see, we're still largely on track, spending, encumbering, allocating, and getting things done. That's
Michael, just
big
let me
overview.
stop you for a second.
Sure.
Most of our viewers by now understand that this committee deals with the state's brick and mortar. We've often used that term. And a lot of people don't understand that virtually everything that you have just spoken about is part and parcel of the state's brick and mortar system. And the funding that comes through our committee is all through the capital bill. And there are major parts of the capital bill that deal with everything you have just mentioned. And I let you skip over an acronym that you used, and that's CCC.
Okay.
My historical knowledge tells me that's Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the late 1930s, developing the Civilian Conservation Corps in the midst of the Great Depression. And that's essentially where you got started.
That's exactly right, Senator. Sorry for missing the acronym. The Civilian Conservation Corps. It was the origin of the state park system, ski industry in our state, and right. So that was a vision that was laid out, and investment was made, putting people to work, public works projects, and developing campgrounds and fireplaces and lean-tos and pavilions, many of which we still have and have been cared for very nicely. Some of our more modern installations kind of reflect that history in terms of style and approach. Vibe, if you will. But right, that was a very important part of our state's history. We're coming up on now, the state park system began before in 1926, I think, 1924. We're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the state park system. So it began prior with the establishment of Mount Philo State Park. But then that was the real kickoff to development of campgrounds around the state. I guess is the way I'd say it, is that as you have it, in the mid to late 30s and early 40s under President Roosevelt.
So I interrupted you right when you were talking about the challenges that you're currently facing. I'm assuming you're still maintaining things like the outhouses from back in the 1920s and 30s, but you have lots more on your plate as technology has advanced. All kinds of access has been altered, but the challenges you are presently facing, what do you see as the biggest concerns right now?
Well, workforce. I want to give Nate in particular a chance to reflect here, and Frank, because they both have a really fine, detailed understanding of what's going on right now in both places. So beginning with workforce, we hire nearly 400 seasonals are the frontline service providers in our state parks. Nate leads a core of year-round professionals in the management ranks of state parks, but in each park, your park managers, attendants, assistant managers, et cetera, maintenance folks. The seasonal workforce is a real challenge. It's just to find enough people. Housing is related to that. These are good jobs. We pay them well, and we have good benefits. And there's a strong returning segment that's really interesting, that we have this people who come back because they are great seasonal jobs. And for some people that really works. But for the rest, it can be a real challenge to find the numbers and get them in the right places in Vermont. So that's one. Just generally speaking, workforce, seasonal workforce, and appropriately skilled workforce for certain of our jobs. The unsung heroes are the maintenance technicians, electricians, plumbers that keep everything humming, that if we're doing it right, campers don't know. And that's all behind the scenes. Those are skilled trades, and they can be proved difficult to find as well more recently. So there's workforce. I hope Nate would back me on that. And then on the other end, it's just pressures, demands, and keeping up, particularly with difficult construction. Everything from our challenges with this, we have a limited season. When we can, because of the business of the parks, through supply chain interruptions now, through the pandemic, workforce, materials, and the skyrocketing costs. I think those would frame the two ends of the challenges we're facing. The popularity, the importance and value of parks, it's through the roof. And so there's a challenge. That's a good challenge, but meeting that with, you need the workforce, we need the equipment and the supplies. We need that. It puts pressures on the land and the facilities. So we're thrilled at the raging success of parks visitation. And they are commonly seen as among the very best parks in the country. Yet that brings challenges, just the pressures of trying to keep up. Nate, can I pause here and invite you in to either correct anything I've said or add to it, please? And remember, no acronyms.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I'll stop you, Nate, if there isn't an acronym, but as you're jumping in here, I think this is an ideal opportunity for us to hear a little bit about your background and how you came to this position.
Okay, sure. Great. I'm Nate McKean. I'm the State Parks Director, and I've been working in Vermont State Parks for quite some time. Well, certainly within the department. I started out as the seasonal park manager at Little River State Park in Waterbury back in 1993. And I just returned from serving in the Peace Corps in Senegal, West Africa. So in the summer, I was the park manager. In the winter, I was running the snowboarding program up at Jay Peak. So from there, I've had a number of different positions in the department, and including regional manager out of Springfield, chief of park operations, working in the forestry division as a district manager, and then coming back over to parks a year ago. So I have a long history and pretty good understanding of the park system.
Welcome to Senator Institutions. Now you've been asked to fill in the blanks of anything Michael may have left off.
Thank you. I think our seasonal workforce is pretty remarkable. They come together every year to do remarkable work and great things. And the strength of that workforce is that they come from all over the country. We have volunteers that come from every corner of the country, and we recruit heavily within Vermont. We rely a lot on the Vermont workforce. In fact, I think most of us who live here either have worked in a state park, or we know somebody who has worked in a state park. It's just part of the lifeblood of the state. It's been a challenge in recent years to recruit enough staff for the full season. So I'm just concurring with what Mike said, and it's a strength of ours, but it's a big annual challenge. And we're pretty much recruiting year round now through every avenue you can imagine, and trying to reach a lot of different diverse audiences that might want to come and experience working in a state park. And we call it a lifestyle, not just a job. People who want to work outdoors, really want to help others enjoy the outdoors, and people that are friendly. So that's my plug for the seasonal workforce. Most of us that are here full-time now in the Parks Division, there's 48 of us full-time year-round. Many of us started out as a seasonal park person, park staff person.
It's been a bit of a, if I could, Nate, this is something that Nate's helped me realize, is that, we should see this parks operating as an attractant, that it's basically a demographic attractant and a workforce attractant. We're bringing people, as Nate says, from all over, and then they end up saying, I kind of like it here, and they end up getting winter work, or indeed turn it into, as Nate says, many of our people started this way and they stay. We're proud of that, and I think it's a great way for people to come experience Vermont, fall in love with Vermont, stay, make a family, and add.
So you need a good sales pitch, like it's not just a job, it's an adventure. That's what you're looking for?
Nate's on that, yes.
Yeah, a lot of folks do come and they will stay for a number of years. And I know it's a big goal of all of us in Vermont to get people to move here and to stay and work. And the park system has been very successful at that. We do have a challenge of not quite enough housing, whether that's a campsite with full hookups for people who want to come with their RVs, or just general staff housing. So that's something we are focused on, we want to work on. And it brings up another challenge, which is, as this committee, I'm sure, is very, very well aware of, so much work is done and resources spent on infrastructure that isn't really necessarily going to wow somebody coming to the state park. It's not a new, there's a lot of underground piping, infrastructure between the walls, staff housing, maintenance areas that are critical to the operation, but don't necessarily increase the programmatic goals or changes in contemporary recreation, what folks are looking for when they come to a park. So we're very focused on not just fixing what we have, but staying up programmatically with what contemporary recreation needs to offer for all audiences.
What's your age demographic for seasonal workers?
Great question. And we were just talking yesterday, as a matter of fact, on tracking that better. But it's really across the spectrum. We have high school students and college students. Many people have come and they work for us and they're starting a brand new career, midlife change, particularly in this day and age. And then certainly retirees, many of them are healthy for many years and they're great employees too. So it's all over the map.
Chance for you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I was going to say there's at least 4 old guys on this committee who might need a summertime job.
Myself, I look forward to a bright future of seasonal employment in Vermont State Parks, but I'm not sure Nate will have me at this point. We'll have to see.
Well, while we're on this particular subject, I want to tell a little story about one of your state parks, and that is my first overnight experience on Vermont soil was down in East Dorset at Emerald Lake State Park. And just for the heck of it, I was bored 2 weeks or so ago, and I decided I was going to take a ride down there just to revisit. Walked around. There was a little bit of snow on the ground, but it's a great place to just walk around. The buildings that are there are 2 in particular on the flat by the lake. One is the what appeared to me to be the same building from 1973, where the counselors or the what do you call them nowadays? I called them rangers back then, but what do you call somebody?
Park managers.
Park managers. Is that the same building from 1973? It looked like it with a lot of coats of paint on it. That's
Yep. We do a lot of painting, and that is indeed the same building.
that's quite remarkable. I actually made friends with all of them because at the time I was playing guitar a lot. And it was a great thing to walk down to the beach and play guitar. And they would come by after they were done with their workday. And I thought that they had the coolest uniforms. That was all I wanted, was one of those uniforms. And I can peg the date too, because last time that I was playing on that beach, I believe the date was August 9th. And that was the night that Richard Nixon resigned. I was literally playing guitar for a group of them, and all of a sudden he came on the radio to announce his resignation, and the whole audience got up in mass and walked off, and it's the only time that's ever happened. Anyhow, I just wanted you to know that was a great memory, and you guys have kept that place up really well.
Mr. Chair,
nice
if you
to
want, you want a uniform, Mr. Chair, I'm sure you could get one if the funding is adequate enough.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that before these guys are out of here.
I just have to
I'm
say,
still waiting for my vest from Lewis Porter, and he's gone now. So
Senator Perrin, I believe you have a pretty spiffy hat. I
I
believe you
do.
did.
I did get a hat from Commissioner Snyder.
Yes.
Oh,
So, Senator Benning, I just have to register my shock that story, as wonderful as it is, it did not include reference to a metal detector. I'm just shocked.
Right, that's right. There. Yeah, he hasn't got to that yet because he found something very valuable there and he's not telling anybody.
you missed our testimony a couple of weeks ago. We had our Lake Champlain experience at Arnold Bay all on the screen here. It was a lot
They
of
had his
fun.
picture there. They had his picture. Yep.
Yep.
Well, I do appreciate this story, and more seriously, I mean, this is one of my favorite parts of this job. There's some tough aspects, but boy, listening to people, everyone's got a Vermont State Parks memory, or many. I've heard them from Senator Perrin, who grew up in the Islands Parks and how important it was to his family. Senator McCormick has called and made comments about his visits to Wilgus, I believe it was, most recently. I know Senator Mazza, who's off screen, but we talk about the connection of his business and our parks. And I'm guessing, Senator Engels, you've got a handful of stories too. We just haven't heard them yet, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got these, and they're great.
Yeah, we just took family pictures at Killcare this summer.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, the 1973, I was just 16 and 17 years old back then. But the story continues because I went back down there when my kids were younger and we camped out for the weekend. But I had a Coleman lantern that was literally my father's back in the 70s and managed to blow it up. And my kids have never forgiven me for that. They always bring that up whenever we try to go camping. They don't want me touching a match and a lantern. Just doesn't
Now
work.
that reminds me of what we call incident reports. You know, people, million visitors to the parks, some stuff happens. And these all eventually filter up through staff appropriately, and I get to read all these reports. And so blowing up of lanterns and the like, it's all part of the mix. It's quite rich out there.
I don't know how long you keep reports for, but there's probably a note in there somewhere about some idiot blowing up a lantern on top of a picnic table.
And we could share stories, and it's wonderful. And that, I think that just suggests something about the importance of these investments. I'm proud of the care that we take in planning for these investments, deploying them, the way these folks operate, our partners and contractors, the results. It's all great. But I do want to make sure you're satisfied with our approach. I think Frank in particular could answer any question you might have about unspent capital. It's on its way. There's a couple of good reasons for the larger one you see here is mostly tied to the rustic cabin program and the goal of having the kids working on that at the tech center. Progress, but interruptions, and we're as frustrated. I don't want to call it frustrated. We're as eager to get it done as anyone, and are just working as best we can through the limitations, particularly exacerbated now with a couple of years of pandemic interruptions.
Okay. I figured that Frank was here to talk about the numbers because he's the best dressed of the three of you. But I don't want to pass up. Senator McCormick actually had his hand up there.
Great.
I don't know if he wanted to kick in something.
Well, actually, I was going to talk about Wilgus, which he already did, just very briefly.
Please.
I spent my life as a hiker. Since my knees became arthritic and I've gained weight, I can't hike anymore. The knees won't allow it. So I'm back to canoe trips. And the Connecticut River is just a wonderful asset to canoe on. And, we put in way up near White River and spent the day. And it wasn't a hard day. It was about, 10 miles. And then spent the night at Wilgus and got up in the morning and continued on. And they couldn't have taken better care of us. It was almost like we had servants tending to us, because I don't think they get as many canoers as they should. And so they actually.
You said way up by White River?
Well, I mean, for canoe, yeah.
Actually, I started up in the Connecticut Lakes and I got all the way down to Lancaster. So when you say way up to White River and then down to Wilgus, I'm like, what was that?
I was talking about an afternoon. About
Yeah,
an
okay.
afternoon. Yeah. It was a good afternoon. I did 16 miles on the Racket River last summer in a day. That was a good day's work.
I will say that Eric, the park manager at Wilgus, he's probably one of the best fishing guides in the state. He doesn't do it professionally, but he's just fantastic.
Well, you don't usually have a mechanized portage. That was really nice.
All right. So Michael, reserve one of those hats. I want to talk to you about that later.
We got it covered.
Frank,
I'll remind the committee tomorrow.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave you out there hanging, but actually the topic of the conversation was supposed to be about capital fund balances. How are we doing for money?
So, thanks, Senator. I love the story, by the way. So we're currently working within our current fiscal year, except for the state parks portion of it, except for what Commissioner Snyder already mentioned about the rustic cabin program. We're essentially working within the current fiscal year of appropriation. Our spoken goal is that we want to have this stuff gone within 2 fiscal years because we do operate around a park season. But we're currently within the current fiscal year, and it's going out the door. We have it all. We have several large projects that are coming to fruition. You allocated money for rustic cabins using contractors. We already have a signed contract for cabins going in at Queechee. So we are well on our way and are working within the current funding.
Have you guys made your pitch for the House side of things yet in Alice's committee?
No.
I'm trying to get some sense of where everybody is with respect to our counterparts in the House. We'd all kind of like to get out of this session early. So whatever I can do to encourage that to move along, I try to put a plug in.
Great. We're ready.
Okay. Anything else you guys need to tell us today?
Well, if you're good on the, that's the long and short of the Capitol, with some
Yes,
fun
sir.
stories along the way. I could quickly just introduce this, request for your consideration of a potential joint resolution, just to tee it up, which was, shall I pivot to that, Senator Benning?
That's an excellent pivot, Michael, and I will start the conversation by saying to our listeners that one of the things we are constantly doing is looking at what state lands we have, what better ways to utilize those lands, and how to make connections with other lands that might be better by sometimes trading off what we currently own and getting something else. And I think that's where we are in this next conversation.
Thank you. You have it right. And so this, and for your sort of viewing audience, I would just explain that the commissioner of the department is, is required when we need to seek not governor's approval for land acquisitions, but when we convey in any way any real interest in land, we need the governor's approval and the approval of the General Assembly. We seek your approval for any sort of land transaction of that sort through what's known as a joint resolution. It's often usually treated as a bill, but it's different than a bill, and I'll leave that to you, Ledge Counsel, to explain to your viewers. But it's a different legislative mechanism. And so here I come today, having sent a memo, which is our custom, to just tee it up for the two institutions committees in each one in each body, to say we would be seeking, we'd appreciate your consideration to provide your approval through a joint resolution to authorize us to make this land transaction, which relates to Long Trail State Forest, which is state forest protected land in partnership with the Green Mountain Club, which you have supported significantly as we seek to get final protection for the entirety of the Long Trail. There's a section here where we share boundaries with the Nature Conservancy and Vermont Land Trust. And it's the request is for us to do a boundary line confirmation and adjustment. So it's not selling land, it's not giving land away, it's not trading, it's really just doing our due diligence about, we need to figure out where and confirm where this boundary line is. It's public land, it's our responsibility to avoid future encroachments or loss, whatever. It's prudent and appropriate for us to establish the boundary, and it may involve moving one way or another. And so we want to be covered by, if that involves conveying any land or interest in land, we need your approval. So we've done a bunch of really complicated land deals in the past. This one's not one of those. It's pretty straight up. I did not intend to put this before you for action today. I'm just teeing it up and asking that, as normal, while the House has and as Representative Emmons has indicated, well, they have the Capitol, maybe we could start the joint res over here. So I prepared the memo with staff to share with you the background. There's a map. It's pretty straightforward, and would hope that you'd consider it. Perhaps if you need us, we'd come back and provide further testimony. As is our custom, we offer, just as a starting point, some draft language for the joint resolution, knowing that the likes of Michael Chernick will do their thing as appropriate. And we don't mean to intend that this is what it needs to be. We just thought offer it as helpful as this could work as language to help convey our interest to you and what we're trying to do here. So we've shared it with Michael and Becky as well. Both committees now have it. You were kind enough to let us add this to the agenda, and I just wanted to tee it up. I hope that makes sense, Mr. Chair.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And I don't know if Becky is on the screen. Don't see her on my screen. Becky, are you out there someplace? I don't see her at this point. Michael, I think, well, let me ask, has the language actually been drafted?
No, we just offered with our memos, we usually do. And here, by the way, here's some, we've included some draft language for starting point that might work. I heard back from Michael saying, yeah, well, we'll draft that. And when, the committee needs to deal with it. And so he's ready, he has it, he responded. I know we copied Becky as well. So I'm just, again, I don't want to interfere inappropriately or get in the wrong place. I'm just saying we've offered it up at usually that's a good starting point, and then Michael or others take it from there, and we'll work with you or them on that as you wish.
Okay, we have a meeting with Alice Emmons this afternoon, but I'm imagining if you can get the whatever memo you were delivering to Michael and to Becky. We'll have a conversation with the chair of the House side of this institutions committee and figure out which one of us wants to take it up first. And then if it's us, we'll get you back in and have a conversation.
Sounds great. And just so you know, to be clear, both committees have received the memo and the draft language and the maps, the little package, and as has Ledge Council. So we've shared it. They all have them. And if anybody's missing anything or have questions and need something on background, just give us a shout. But others, I'll stay tuned and wait. And we'll look forward to following up on that piece.
My committee assistant, Alex, is on the screen. Alex, if you would just make a note to yourself that we need to figure out which committee is going to actually take this bull by the horns. And we'll take care of that from here, Michael. Thanks for bringing it up.
Great. Thank you. Thanks again. Good to be back with you all. And let's hope that perhaps we've talked about this. Maybe this is the summer where things come back to normal and we can do a little tour and show you where we've spent some of this money and maybe visit some of these parks, for example.
Can we go to State Park free now or today, or do we visit them free today or what?
I'm with you, Senator. I'm with you.
Actually, some of our committee members may not have been with us on the last trip we took. I don't even remember when that was now.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it must be, but it is really important, and our YouTube listeners should know that the committees do try to get out there and figure out what's not just being talked about on the screen, but experiencing for ourselves what is out there that we're actually talking about.
I'll take you to the sandbar. I'll take you to the sandbar and I can make lunch for you here.
That sounds pretty interesting. I may bring my metal detector. Oh, no, I can't do that. Wait, it's a state park.
Well, we'll look forward to all of that. Sounds
All
great.
right.
Thank you all.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming by institutions.
You bet.
Thank you all.
See ya.
Commissioner Fitch, welcome back to Senate Institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have to give a plug for state parks. They are my favorite place to go with my family. We love hiking, we love camping, we love paddle boarding, we love all the things state parks bring to Vermont and offer to Vermonters and visitors. So I'm always in their corner. Love them.
Thank you, Commissioner and Senator. She was not paid to say that. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll leave you be now.
Well,
I'll give her a sandwich.
Commissioner Fitch, you and Eric didn't hear the story, so I'll tell it again because I love the story. When I was a teenager, I first came to Vermont to spend my first night with my family camping. And this is 1973 and 74. We went to Emerald Lake State Park down in East Dorset. And I played guitar, and Eric knows I play guitar, but the upshot was back then I wasn't too bad at playing guitar, and I often attracted a group of people who would come and sit and listen, and we would play for hours. And that included some of the park caretakers who were off their jobs for the afternoon or whatever. And on one occasion, I was playing, and then all of a sudden somebody came on, walked by and said, "Richard Nixon's on the radio." And the entire group got up en masse and walked away from me as I was sitting there playing guitar. It was the night he resigned from the presidency. So it was just one of those memories.
You sure they walked away because it was the president?
Yeah.
It wasn't the music. No. Okay.
It wasn't the music, right. But the other part of that conversation is 25 or 6 years later, I went back to the park with my family, and my two kids were probably 8 and 9 years old. And as we were camping, I had a Coleman lantern that was my father's and was the thing that lit up our campground back in the 1970s. And somehow or other, I managed to blow it up. So my kids can't stop laughing about that. That's my parks experience for Vermont. That's my afternoon story to tell.
Well,
And
I
I'm sure
remember
all
the
of
day.
us, yeah, all of us have great stories to tell about the parks.
I have great stories to tell about Senator Benning playing the guitar, because one day I came into the committee room and he had his Martin out. I think it was a Martin. And
Gil,
oh, Guild. Oh, okay. In any case, you're really not too bad, sir. I have to
that was
say.
better.
I thought you told me you left because it was bad.
Well, that's what I told you, but I'm telling Senator Benning that I'm okay to play guitar in front of you because I think you're pretty good.
Well, I always wanted to be a rock star, but I became a politician instead. What a mistake that was. Oh, geez.
It's not that
All
different, I promise.
So,
Joe,
Commissioner,
Mr. Chairman, you and I have something in common. I played for many years. I played Gildes.
yep,
You can
Good
hit it
guitar.
hard. You can play it loud, louder than a Gibson or a Martin.
yeah, I'm afraid the guitar that I had back in the 70s, which is still my main guitar, I've stood too close to campfires too many times, so it's got cracks in the face. That's try to get that repaired is not an easy thing.
My Gildes
Anyway.
are all gone from too many nights in the trunk at 40 below,
Yeah,
coming home from gigs.
Yeah,
understandable.
mine wears that scar as well.
All right, so we've covered the music portion of the afternoon. Commissioner Fitch, you are back to talk about proposed budget adjustments for BGS capital projects. Are you taking the lead in this conversation?
I am, Mr. Chairman, and for the record, my name is Jennifer Fitch, and I am the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. And today I have with me Joe Asia, so he'll answer any questions that I can't. And of course, we always have Eric Philcorn with us, our principal assistant. Though I think, Eric, are you going to be able to stay on the whole time, or are you going to need to cut out at some point?
Only if you tell me to.
Oh, I thought there was maybe another committee going on at the same time, so I didn't know.
Everything's happening in Senate institutions today. This is the place to be.
Got it.
Oh,
Just for our YouTube listeners, you've heard a wonderful introduction because Commissioner Fitch has been here so many times now. She got the routine down. And Eric is always here providing the humorous background commentary. Joe will figure out what to talk with you about in a minute or two, but you're the anchor. Is that the idea?
That's the idea. I provide technical support when needed.
Okay.
He keeps
Well,
me on.
welcome to all three of you. So Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity today to come in and talk about budget adjustment for BGS specifically, which we lovingly call Section 2 of the capital bill. I will go through each of these line items and we'll talk about which are being proposed for the cash fund and which are being proposed for capital funds. As Secretary Clouser said yesterday, basically anything that is feasibility, planning, or design, we're proposing to be in the cash fund, and anything that's under construction, we're proposing to be in the capital bill. So that's kind of a high level broad brush. And then I'll also obviously speak to those projects that we are requesting additional funds for and why we're requesting those additional funds over what was appropriated last year. So as we go through it, we'll just go line by line. Oops, I lost you. Hold on. Where'd you go?
We're still here.
All right, my spreadsheet is big, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to put this back without, there we go. Okay. So if we follow along, does everybody have their spreadsheet or need their spreadsheet before I start? Or we're all ready to go?
Yep, okay, good.
So with that, the first line item and the most important one, Mr. Chairman, and you made me nervous the other day, is major maintenance. So this item is to address all deferred maintenance in our facilities. And we have 240 state-owned facilities, a variety of facilities, right? Laboratories, correctional facilities, police barracks, mental health care facilities, general office space, the State House, which is my favorite building of all the buildings we have jurisdiction over. And so this line item is really important because it addresses what we call deferred maintenance, which are those items, systems, for example, building systems that are beyond their replacement date, right? Which means they already should have been replaced. And so they are deferred. This is our most critical line item of all the line items in our capital bill, because again, this addresses all the deferred maintenance, and we have more deferred maintenance than we have funding to address it. So last year, you had approved an appropriation of $7,350,000. This year, we are asking for the same amount of money, so there's no change from last year. And we are proposing for it to be in the capital bill, and that is because the work that's done here, right, is actual construction work in our buildings. And so that's why that's staying in that category. The second line item on here is statewide BGS engineer and architectural costs. We are asking, you had appropriated last year 3.7 million. And this year, what we are asking is that this gets taken out of the capital bill completely and goes into general fund and becomes part of my normal program budgets and becomes part of my base budget. So that's the change. We have requested to take it out and have it funded by general fund bills. The next line item is statewide physical security enhancements. This is Margie Clark's line item. I know you guys really like to have Margie Clark in, so I hope that she has the opportunity to do so. This is for all of our physical security infrastructure. So your card readers, your panic buttons, your cameras, anything that enhances the safety and security of our buildings. We typically ask for an appropriation of $250,000. That stayed the same. We're not requesting more. And we're requesting that it stays in the capital fund. And again, because this is primarily all construction. The next line item is statewide planning, use, and contingency. This line item is used for, as it says, planning projects. So we're actually have 6 projects that are in planning right now. And the goal with that, again, is to develop the scope and the cost so that when we come back and ask for design and construction funds, we have a much better sense of what we're requesting. And reuse, it's called use here, but we call it reuse, is when a state agency like BGS moves from 2 to 4 Aiken up to the 5th floor of 133. When we move state agencies and departments around, typically we need what's called a little bit of fit up so that the space works for their program. And so this reuse line item is used for that. And then the last thing it's used for is contingency. So often when we're in construction and we don't have enough funding, we can pull up to $50,000 from this line item to augment those projects when our projects go over budget. And so last year, you had appropriated $500,000 for FY23. We're asking for the same amount, so we're not changing it. The only difference here is that we're asking for $200,000 from the cash fund for the planning portion of this funding and $300,000 for the capital bill funding. And that's for the reuse part and the contingency part, because again, that's construction and planning is planning. The next one, which is 108 Cherry Parking Garage. We've heard about this one for years.
Oh my
I'm
God,
guessing,
please.
I'm guessing it's one of your favorites, right?
Oh.
I know it
We
needs
should have
to.
buried that thing a long time ago.
I understand, Senator Mazza. The good news is, and the bad news at the same time, is that we put this project out for construction in the fall. We had about 15 million in the bank, and Joe can correct me on the dollars and cents for construction. We bid it out and it came back. We got one bid for $24 million.
Oh my God.
Joe did go out and he talked to the company that bid, as well as the folks that pulled the bid, and he asked them why the price was so high. And the price was really high for a couple of reasons. One, the slabs, which is what you drive on and in the parking garage at the different levels, are integral to the beams or the posts of the building. And so because they're integral, when you take out the slab, you now have potentially an unstable building. So you have to do a lot to stabilize it in place while you're renovating the garage. So there's a lot of risk there. The second piece was we were asking for all the work to be done on nights and weekends when the building was not occupied. And anytime you ask to do work off hours, it's more expensive. So we're going to take a new approach and we're going to put this project back out as a construction manager construction method, which allows the designer and the contractor to work together. And so basically what they can do is they can pitch different ideas on how to build it and construct it that hopefully they will be able to do at a lower dollar amount. In addition to that, we will be open to the contractor proposing to do some amount of work during normal work hours that is not disruptive to the building tenants. And that again, hopefully will bring the cost down on the project. That all being said, we went back to the design firm and we said, what do we think is a really reasonable cost for construction? And they came back with a $20 million cost estimate. So you had approved nothing for FY23 last year. We are coming back and we're requesting an additional $2 million at this time. And we're asking for that in the capital bill funds because it's for construction. And when we put out the CM contract, which we're going to do here in the next month or two, we will know what the total dollar amount for the project is. We will likely be coming back seeking the final amount of funding to complete this project in FY24.
Can I just ask a question?
You may.
You got one bid for this project?
That is correct.
Unusual in a project of this size?
Joe, would you like to answer that?
It is unusual, but part of that problem is parking decks are not typical in Vermont. And so they did have the local firm did reach out to a Massachusetts and they had 3 bids actually from Massachusetts and I want to say New Jersey firms provide a price. But because talking to the people who did take out plans, it was that high risk and not having the laborers working at night was just too risky for them. So by going with a construction management process, we can better work together to, it's share the risk, share the reward. So we'll be in it together that they can bid out smaller portions for just work that can go on during the day. Your plumber, electrician, mechanical guy, they can work during the day. They're not making all that noise that is going to take place at night. And also,
why don't you just close the garage? Why can't you do it? They got parking downtown.
because even though we closed the garage in X number of years, sometime probably over 8 to 10, the building will become more unstructurally sound.
No. Close the garage for repairs.
Oh, well, because there's 3 stories above the garage of office space. So the garage will be closed. It'll just be
find a parking next door. They got in that parking garage.
That's we've already included that in the cost, is they get to park next door. It's all that noise during the day of removing all that concrete that'll be very noisy and they won't be able to work above. So the garage is 100% closed when we do this.
Yes, what a mess. I think we've got to figure out a way to get out of that mess sooner or later. Sell a building or something. Okay, thank you.
Senator Mazza.
Dynamite's a lot less expensive than.
No, that's it. Talk about a pit of money. That's the money pit right there. $20 million, $25 million again.
Yeah.
Sell it.
Senator Mazza, I appreciate your frustration. I am equally frustrated as well. I will tell you that we had White and Burke that did a financial assessment on a variety of scenarios, which included selling the building, knocking it down, rebuilding, repairing the garage, all sorts of different scenarios. And it turns out, believe it or not, and we reworked the numbers to see if it was still the same with the current price tag, that repairing the garage is a better fiscal decision than selling it or knocking it down or doing something else with it. And we are happy to provide that assessment if you'd like to see it to your committee.
Oh, if they fix it this time, is that a 20-year deal or is it going to be another 5 years and we're going to do it again? I mean, that's.
It is we went with a 20-year fix. We had them look at a shorter lifespan and the 20-year fix made the most sense of getting it done. So that's what we're going with. This is a major repair.
Senator McCormick.
Thanks. Could I just have a brief history on this? Because I'm newly returned to this committee after many years. When was this put on, and when did this open in the first place?
Joe, do you want to just talk about how we acquired the building and kind of go from there?
I don't remember the exact year that we acquired the building. I want to say it was in the 80s, sometime in the 80s. Bobby Miller had constructed the parking garage itself, and it had an open deck.
Yes.
We came along, purchased the property, and put a building on top of it.
Excuse me, forgive me for being rude. A frozen pipe has just thawed out. I've got to turn the faucet off. I'm sorry.
That was never. I think there was faults in the building of the basement when it was built. I think it was not properly built and designed.
I believe that we had found that out after the fact, that what was actually constructed was not the same thing that we had on the plans. It still holds up the building. It's still structurally sound. There are no issues with it. It's just that it's a parking garage that has received a lot of salt and has some issues, as all indoor parking garages do in the Northeast. It's the salt.
Forgive me for stepping out. When was it built?
It was, I want to say it was in the mid 80s
80s.
that we built
Okay.
on top of the existing garage.
And you're
John
saying what,
January building.
you're saying what's there is not what was in the plans? Did the contractor make good?
The building itself is fine. It was the owner, Bobby Miller, who built the parking garage, did not build it on the plans that we had, that we saw. So we
Right.
found this, we've only found this out because of going back in and making some minor repairs over the years. And some of the rebar that's supposed to be in there, that we thought was in there, the type of the rebar, it was supposed to be epoxy coated rebar, and it was not. It was standard black bar. So the problem being is that it's not holding up to the salt as well as it should have. Structurally, it is sound. So,
So did we get our money back? Did we get our
No.
money back?
no, I don't think, I was not part of that deal, even though I've been around during those times.
It was
I
a
don't know if
bad
it was-
deal. It was a bad deal from day one with the contractor, and somehow we just got stuck with it. We just keep pouring money into it. It's unfortunate, but I don't know what the answer is, but I know you're doing the best you can. I understand, but boy,
It's
terrible.
as the
Senator-
commissioners. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Eric Philcorn, BGS, all the things you've said today are things that we've said to each other as we have discussed what to do about this project. And Commissioner Fitch is right that we did a study exploring all the potential scenarios for getting out of there one way or another, and hold seemed to be the most fiscally responsible one. And even after the recent high bids and inflation, we did go back and look at the numbers again, partly hoping that maybe we could cut and run, and it just doesn't, unfortunately, on paper, it doesn't make sense.
Thanks.
And we will never buy a parking garage again, and we will never build a parking garage again. I'm shutting up now.
Say never. Yeah, speaking about the Thrush Tavern parking lot, okay.
Senator, no.
Probably shouldn't open that can of worms right now. All right, Commissioner, we were leaving off the parking garage.
All right, so jumping off the parking garage, I don't recommend that, but we're gonna do that right now. So we're gonna move on to the State House Maintenance of Interior Historic Finishes. This is one of David Sheets' line items, our state curator. And he takes care of all sorts of things like carpet and drapes and furnishings. He's really what keeps the historic nature of the State House, and we very much appreciate David and all he brings. So last year you had appropriated $55,000 for FY23. We are seeking the same amount, no change. The only change is we are proposing $10,000 for the cash fund and $45,000 for the capital fund. And again, the $10,000 is for David for planning and design, and the $45,000 is for the actual furnishings, carpets and drapes and things like that.
So if I need to redo the drapes in a certain southwesterly corner office, I have to go to see David. Is that the idea?
That is correct. David and the Sergeant of Arms, actually, they both work together. But yes, David is the one.
Okay.
And he's always fun to have in committee. So if you ever want to have someone fun in committee, I recommend bringing in David. The next line item is State House Exhibition, Interpretation, Design, and Construction. So this really has to do with David, and he's developing an interpretive plan for the State House. And that's really, how do we bring all the cultural aspects of Vermont and represent it inside of the State House? And so this money will be used for him, for his exhibitions, and any other sort of portraits, paintings, different things that will eventually come out of the interpretive plan. Last year, you appropriated $45,000. We are asking for the same amount this year, so no change. The only change is we are requesting $5,000 for the cash fund and $40,000 for the capital fund. Same thing, planning and design versus construction.
Let me just freeze you, Commissioner, for a moment. Alex, I'm hoping that you're listening right now, but lines 8 and 9, David Sheets would be a good talking point for next Friday afternoon.
Gotcha, will do.
Thank you. Sorry, Commissioner.
David is
Taking care
always
of logistics.
David is always wonderful, so I recommend him coming in anytime. The next one, Mr. Chairman, should be near and dear to your heart. This is the line item for the new Newport Courthouse. As you know, the current Newport Courthouse is old and it's antiquated, and it no longer functions for the judiciary in the way that ideally it functions. So examples of that are when we design courthouses today, we have what we call, I lovingly call, the front of the house. That's the public facing part of the courthouse. And then the back of the house, which is the private and secure portion of the courthouse, and is, that's where the justices are and other court administrative staff. And they like to keep that degree of separation for safety purposes. This courthouse does not lend itself to that. The way it's just an old, it looks like a hotel. If you've ever seen it, it looks like a hotel, looks like an old building. So that, and the elevator is too small. So if you've ever been in the elevator in the Supreme Court, it's similar in the current Newport Courthouse, in that you can basically only fit a wheelchair in there straight in and straight out. It does not meet current ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. And so that's another problem. And the other thing is the electrical is all old and needs to be upgraded. So that building needs a lot of work. We are proposing, and it was approved previously, to build a new Newport Courthouse in the Newport downtown area that would address many of the things that I just talked about. So with that, last year you appropriated $525,000 to continue with planning and design. And this year we are proposing the same amount, but we're asking for it for the cash fund, because again, it's planning and design. And to give you a quick update on that project, Mr. Chairman, the judicial branch wanted to go through and do their initial programming for those judicial functions. And I guess it's becoming more innovative. And so they have an expert that they're working with. And so we wanted to wait for that portion to come in. Now that we have it, we're putting out a more thorough planning study. And that's really because we will likely have other building occupants, such as the current Newport Courthouse has had probation and parole in there, as well as state's attorneys. So we want to make sure that for whatever tenants we're identifying, that the building functions for all the tenants, including the judiciary. And so we're about to put out we've already put out an RFP for planning. We also did go out with a land acquisition RFP, request for proposal. We did get several submissions back. Only one of those submissions met the requirements. We did try to negotiate with what I will call the landowner, and we were unsuccessful in our negotiations. However, we will go back out after the planning study is done, because then we'll know exactly how much we need for square footage for a courthouse. So that is where that one currently stands.
Can I just ask, the one that fit the requirements, you're going to still pursue an attempt at that, or are we abandoning that particular offer altogether?
We have closed out that request for proposal, but we will put out a new request for proposal, and we hired a real estate firm to help us, get the word out. And they did solicit bids, or they did try to solicit bids from various landowners, and they will do the same thing this time as well.
So we're set back another couple of years anyway on trying to get a new courthouse in Newport. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm actually not. So we were eager to hopefully acquire land early in the process, but ideally we would go through planning and programming before we would ever go out to request land, because you should know what your requirements are for a building before you go out and you find land. So we're actually, we were out of order and sequence when we did it that way. So now we're actually doing it the right way. So it should not slow us down in any way, shape, or form.
With respect to the current buildings, is it necessary to move probation and parole and the state's attorney's office from there into the new courthouse building?
So probation and parole has already moved out. They moved out a few months ago, and they're now in lease space because they didn't find that the building met their functional needs. State's attorneys, I have heard from several times, they also don't feel that the building meets their functional needs as well. So either we would have to find state's attorneys another home, or we would include them in the programming for the new Newport Courthouse. And then our goal would be to seek authorization from the administration as well as the legislature to sell the current building. There is interest in utilizing that building for senior housing, for example, and other uses. So there is interest in that building if we got to the point where we could sell it.
Okay, part of that prospective use would involve redesigning the elevator anyway.
That
I've
is
been up and
correct.
down that elevator 1,000 times. It's not going to work for senior housing especially. But I'm just trying to scope out in my own head, what decade are we going to have this project completed? And I'm not sure there's an easy answer to that yet.
When you're governor.
So right now, I believe our spending profile, Joe, but I'd have to look it up. I believe is 5 years is my memory. It's either 5 or 6, but I believe it's 5.
We were somewhat optimistic and hoping that we'd be completed in FY '26 if we have funding and if we had the property. That was when we put the capital bill together last year, and we weren't sure on not having a property to go to. So FY '26 or '27 right now would be my best guess of having a new building in place.
I've learned a lot in my time on institutions, and there's a lot that anybody could get frustrated about on any one of these projects. And I appreciate the efforts of people who are trying their best. It just, as you look at it over time, you just shake your head and think, what can we do to make these things happen quicker? But it is what it is. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just reminiscing about my time on institutions.
Senator, I shouldn't ask. Sorry, someone had a hand up, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Senator Mazza.
Yeah, what is that 100% funded by the state? That building is not. There's no community funding or local funding or.
That is correct, Senator Mazza. It is a state-owned building, so it's in our fee-for-space program. So the tenants that are in the building pay for the cost to essentially be in the building.
We're probably talking 25 million or so, right? Or 25 million price range. Is that what?
In terms of what the building is appraised for,
No,
Senator
the new building to build, the new building.
Joe, do you
We don't
have the
have a
spending
price.
profile in front of?
Right now, we've estimated only around $9 million because we don't know the total outbuild of that building and who will actually be there or the property.
I see. Okay.
And then we won't know what the cost of goods are going to be and how long it's going to take to get them there and whether we'll have the labor in place to make it happen.
20% more.
Yeah. I'm being facetious. I understand that. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody. It just boggles the imagination.
We are working.
I say that in the context of the St. Johnsbury Courthouse. In 1859, they built the St. J. Courthouse. In January, they signed the contracts. By March, the building's brick were all up. And in December, they started court business. And when you wonder how they could have done it back then and made a building that would last 100 years plus, I get frustrated, I guess. Well, sorry, I'm reminiscing.
Understood, Mr. Chairman. We hear you loud and clear.
Where'd we leave you?
We are now moving on to Asa Bloomer. Asa Bloomer was another one of our property treasure buildings. If folks remember, a couple of days ago, I talked about how the state procured 3 buildings at one point in time. And the state technically owned those buildings at the 20-year period, but we're actually paying the loan off over a 50-year period. And I believe we're in year 23, I want to say. So we just acquired the Asa Bloomer building as a state-owned building about 3 years ago. And we had a property management firm that had been hired to manage that building and provide all operations and maintenance. Unfortunately, that property management firm did not invest into the building or take care of the building in the way that our operations and maintenance staff do. And that left a lot of things that needed to be repaired as soon as we took over ownership. And now that we're in the building. So I can tell you, both from operations and maintenance and from design and construction, this building needs and gets a lot of tender, loving care because it needs it. We're constantly switching out heat pumps. Most recently, we had to do an emergency lighting project. We've had to repair the roof. There's a lot of different things that we've had to do with this building since we put our hands onto it. So every year we have been asking for some amount of money, primarily for operations and maintenance, to do just what I've talked about, to go in there and switch out certain systems because the other ones were old and dying. So we are making investments into this building. I will say that this is our central state office building for the Rutland area. We have basically all of the Agency of Human Services in this building, and it provides client services. So it's an important building in our portfolio. The other thing to know about this building is that we have vacant space. And I am trying to advocate as hard as I can while I am the BGS commissioner to utilize, to the best of our ability, all state-owned space so that we can optimize the space that we have, right? If I've got vacant space in a state-owned building and I don't have a tenant for it, that means I'm not getting any revenue for that space. And the cost of that space is spread across the other tenants in the building, which means they're paying more for the space that they're in. So for a lot of reasons, we want to use that vacant state-owned space. And that is one of the themes in our capital bill. And I'll point that out when we get there. So you had approved approximately $1,575,000 for FY23. We are seeking the same amount of funding this year, and we are asking for the capital bill because it's all construction. And the major thing that it's going to be used for is we basically have a sewer system that runs through our basement that we found out a few years ago. So if you go down into the basement, there is a rectangular hole cut through the floor, and we have a plastic tarp essentially that covers the top of it. And when we get a lot of rainfall, you will see that tarp rises.
Breathes.
And sometimes it overflows into the basement, Mr. Chairman, and you can imagine what it's like when that happens. And so, so it's definitely something that needs to be addressed and corrected. And that is what we are seeking funding for. Joe, remind me, there's one more primary thing. It's going to structural, I think. What was the second thing?
It is a structure also because the river runs under it. It is a structural issue that we also have when we start. How do we replace that with the pipes and the structure? So it's both. It's sewer and structure.
We do good with parking garages.
Well, right next door is a parking garage.
That is true.
Don't jump ahead.
All right. I see that the time is now 2:43, and I asked Representative Emmons to be here at 2:45.
It appears she's in the right place.
What are you doing in my committee room? Oh, that's bad. I know you're paying me back for the picture that I sent you of me sitting in your committee room, but
You got that right, and I'm sitting in your room, in your chair.
I'm glad to see it's still there.
I miss sitting in your room, Senator. Representative. I miss sitting in your seat.
Problem is involved in a roll call right now. So they're finishing up and they're gonna have to call my name again because I missed my name.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh,
So
so they're
how
down
much-
in the
How much,
M's.
how much time do you figure you have?
Well, they're down in the M's. It's gonna take them a few more minutes to start recalling it because I missed my name.
Okay.
Fun.
What's the bill?
Oh, what's your favorite? S30, guns
Oh,
and hospitals.
no.
Oh,
But
boy.
They took out
Hey.
the part about the State House.
Oh, good. All
They
right.
took that part out.
There's nobody in the State House. We don't have to worry about guns in the State House now.
But we're all in here.
Yeah.
I-
You're
I'm
messing
tempted
it
to
up.
come up with a snappy answer to that, but we're live on YouTube. Oh,
Right.
man.
I could too.
Yeah, there's
Oh, where is
our
it here?
room, guys. You see our new TV screen in the corner? Well, thanks for the
That's it, right?
tour, Alice.
There you
Yep, that's very nice. Just stay out of my candy drawer.
I won't get your candy jar, don't worry.
Um,
I'm so
Couldn't
hungry.
resist. I couldn't resist coming down.
Commissioner, I'm going to break at this point, and I know technically what you're doing with us right now is giving us a lead into a conversation we have to be back in substance a little bit later on after we get the official bill over from whatever crazy things the House Committee on Institutions does with it, or the Committee on Corrections and Institutions, pardon me.
They do a lot of crazy things.
But I'll red flag this for you to say that if something has been done that you really can't stand and you need to have corrected, give me a holler and we'll bring you back in and talk about what we need to correct that the House has done wrong. How's that?
I will
Will
do
do.
my best, Mr. Chairman, but I also work with Chair Emmons as well, so.
Well, my condolences, but we will get we will get you back in here to have a conversation. So
You'd
with
rather work with us.
respect to our YouTube environment, Alex, if you could take down, oh no, you don't have it. Sorry, it's a different screen I'm looking at with your spreadsheet on. We will invite you all back in. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the afternoon, but we're going to have a conversation with Chair Emmons about the State House expansion. And the reason that we're having this conversation is I've been asked by Senator Kitchell, Chair of Senate Appropriations, to give Senate Appropriations some kind of a weather report on where our committee is intending to go with this conversation. Alice, I know we really haven't teed this up in the way I would normally want to, but I understand that appropriations is somewhat under the gun to get decisions made about spending down that federal money. And so I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place in trying to present this in a way that leads everybody to feel comfortable about what we're doing. I've asked you to come in today to give us a heads up on what your committee is doing thus far with the conversation. And the way that I've teed it up to the committee is I suspect it really boils down to one of two things. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is that we have two choices. One is we do virtually nothing other than replace the HVAC system. The other is we put a floor on top of the cafeteria. If there is something else going on in your committee that is in addition to that, I know that you and I were going through the summer and fall talking about a report that we eventually came up with and recommendations that we had made. But I don't know to what extent your committee has played with that at this stage and whether or not you've got something else out there that's still on the table that I may need to try to work with Jane Kitchell and try to figure out exactly how to present to her a weather report from our committee's perspective. That's a long way of asking, where are you guys right now with this and what can I tell Jane?
Okay. I'm trying to pay attention to two Zoom screens here, and I think my name is going to come up shortly. So can I just finish this and then, yeah, they're going to start. So hang on a second.
Okay, we can talk about something else.
I have a guild,
You do have a guild.
a DV52.
Ah,
So they had the same
Eric,
I can't
No,
imagine.
that is your picture, Eric. Looks like 20 years ago or something.
Not quite. Maybe 10 though. The hair was brown and everything.
Alice, I heard a no.
you heard it now, yeah.
Are
Now I
you-
can focus a little bit.
Pesky
Okay.
Senate bill.
Welcome back to Senate
Oh,
institutions.
God. Yes, hey, your seat's more comfortable than mine. What we're looking at in my committee, we did make this recommendation to Appropriations Committee to include in the budget adjustment to get the project going. And we are also looking at the HVAC system. And we had a tour of the State House this week with looking at the HVAC system. And the section that's with the cafeteria and any addition that would be put on top of that could be done in the later phase of replacing our HVAC system, because they're going to be doing the HVAC system in phases. So to get back to the expansion, let me put it in context for you and what the advisory committee recommended. The goal is some committee rooms need to be larger on the House side. And the goal is to keep the legislature as intact as possible within the State House and not start spreading us around to other buildings within the Capitol complex. So as you well know, right now under COVID, some of the public meeting rooms have been reassigned. And the plan is that is temporary, that House members will be moving back into committee rooms. The issue is there's about 5 committee rooms, regardless of COVID. There are about 5 committee rooms in the House that are really too small for the members and the public coming in. And particularly now with some of them taking up a TV screen, even limits more at that size. So the thinking is that we would do a floor above the cafeteria. When the cafeteria section was built, it was built supposedly as a weight-bearing floor for future expansion for a floor above that. So the recommendation was that there'd be a floor put above the current cafeteria. The current cafeteria, dining area, and kitchen would move up to that floor because currently the cafeteria and serving area is not functioning well. So move them up, convert the cafeteria space and kitchen space to 5 committee rooms, House committee rooms. And then for those other small committee rooms, such as the Corrections and Institutions Committee, we have education on one side, commerce on the other side. Tear down the 2 walls and build a wall in the middle of our committee room, which then expands those 2 adjoining committees. That's the plan. The other issue that's at play is trying to figure out the mezzanine with 2 Aiken if Ledge Council ever moves to 2 Aiken. That is not agreed to yet. We don't know what's going to happen there. So we're not going into a larger expansion. So it is a floor above the cafeteria. In testimony before the advisory committee, in order, if we can use any ARPA money at all for this expansion, those ARPA dollars have to be out the door by 2026. So in talking with our Sergeant at Arms, it was looked at that it would be good to jumpstart this project for BGS to start doing programming, to look at what programs we need and design documents. We'd be working with the Sergeant at Arms office to start putting into schematic design what it would look like, what are the costs involved, and what are the time frame. And the reason we asked for the 1.5 million in appropriations budget adjustment was to get this process going and not wait until June or July of this year so we can gain some months so that we have a better idea of what the cost will be and what it entails so that we could possibly use some of these federal dollars. So that's our focus. We know the HVAC system is also important. We are not going to pit one against the other. We want to do both. So that's where my committee is at this point. And Corey, she's a cutie.
The burping towel is not for the baby, it's for Corey. When his wife comes in to burp him, it's pretty comical. So at this stage, you've submitted this to Approps on your side?
Yes, my committee made this recommendation with the language that BGS would be working with Sergeant at Arms to put together an RFP to go out to help with this program and design. And we asked for 1.5 million, and this would get us through schematic design, possibly into design documents, so that we're firmer in really what is needed for this. If you do a floor just above the cafeteria, it's not going to be seen visually above the State House. You're not going to see anything on the either side. So it really limits other reviews, such as the Capitol Complex review, or where historic buildings, so such as the federal review. And we're working within the footprint that's already there of the expansion that was done in the late 80s. And they're going to look to see if that is a weight-bearing floor with a cafeteria. They'll look at and see what needs to be done in those smaller committee rooms, my committee room, the one across the hall, and then the two upstairs above us, and take that into account. So we have a better idea in terms of what we're really looking at dollar-wise going forward. So we wanted to jumpstart this. And that's why we made the recommendation to House Appropriations to include in the budget adjustment.
So that's 1.5 million.
Correct.
Okay. Committee questions, comments? Senator Mazza.
Well, I just think that this project's going to cost a lot of money, and I don't even believe it's needed. We're talking what, 15 million, 20 million?
You know, Dick, what we were hearing was around 20 million, and that's why we want to jumpstart this, so we have a better idea of really what's going on. And I know we've talked about this way back in 2005, 2006. It is not that grandiose plan that we were looking at back then. It's
25
really,
million is a grandiose plan.
I know, but
Your
the
book, it
cost-
isn't. Your book, probably 25 million isn't, it'll be 30 million. I still don't understand. I've got to get more information. I still think it's a waste of money just to be able to spend federal money. I think there's other areas we can spend federal money, but we'll talk about it.
Senator Ingalls.
Representative Emmons, where in the response to Dick's question, where could this money be spent if it didn't get spent there?
Well, it depends what part of money you're using. If you're using 113 million, that is part of the ARPA capital infrastructure costs, infrastructure money. Our discussions last session was to split that between the three branches of government. So that's one of the pots we would look at. Part of what's happening on the House side, each committee has 11 members. There's one committee that has less than that. But we're looking at access to state government and allowing Vermonters to access their state government and come into the committee rooms if they show wish and testify to their representatives. And what is starting to happen, and it's been going on for a number of years on the House side, our committee rooms, some of them are just not big enough. Do I want an expansion in a grandiose plan? No. I want to keep, and people want to keep, the State House intact so that the legislative body is intact and we function like we always do, which is so important to build up personal relationships with our colleagues. And if we don't start addressing our committee rooms and the size, might happen, we might get out of this building and start spreading out into some of the other buildings in the complex. And I don't know if we want to do that as a legislature.
So as far as that $100+ million, is it just can be used for capital expenditures? Or we have the flexibility to use that money elsewhere that it wouldn't be capital construction?
We have to work with the federal guidelines and requirements. And we've been working with our joint fiscal office for that 113 million to see what would qualify. The guidelines have started to be developed last fall. And we're going to continue on the House side, working with our Joint Fiscal Office to work on the guidelines and requirements for that 113 million to see if we can use them. Because you're really looking at the health and safety of Vermonters coming in to access state government and looking at Vermonters being elected to serve their constituents and to work in a safe and healthy environment. And we spend all of our days in our committee rooms. And we're hoping, we're hoping those federal dollars will be able to be used for our expansion. So it's not totally on our capital bill.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator McCormick. Dick,
Thanks.
go ahead.
Yeah, Alice, Representative Emmons. The contractors who originally built the cafeteria section of the State House, they didn't happen to also be in the parking garage business, were they? Did they ever build a parking garage?
No, I don't think so. They did construction
All
work
right,
at
yes,
the
all
pavilion
right.
at the same time, but they didn't do the parking garages.
Okay,
Let's
that's
hope-
one thing out of the way. If the issue here is that the existing committee rooms are too small, and we're going to put 5 new committee rooms in the space presently occupied by the cafeteria, my sense, maybe my spatial sense isn't that good. It seems to me that we wouldn't have rooms that were a whole lot bigger than what we've already got.
Are you thinking of just the seating?
We're taking over, we'd be taking,
We're looking
I
at,
just realized, so we'd be taking over the kitchen as well?
yes, that whole area, you move everything upstairs, not just the seating area, but you're looking at the serving area and you're looking at the kitchen area. So that whole area, and we worked on the advisory committee and worked with our Sergeant at Arms office. Video is off. The Sergeant at Arms office, we've been working with them in terms of how many rooms you could fit in that space. And it was about 5, it was 5 committee rooms. It's not just in the seating area, there's also.
And how much bigger?
And the.
Yeah, okay.
and-
How much
Yeah.
bigger will they be than how much bigger will they be than the rooms that are there now?
You know, you would have to connect with the Sergeant at Arms office because we walk through that.
Right.
They would be larger. They would be, Joe, do you remember this at all? It's not as large as the coat room, but it's larger than like House Judiciary or House Education.
I don't recall what the existing, that room is, but I think some of them were around 600, 640 square feet. So yeah, it was made.
That's what we have now, or that,
Pardon?
that's what we have now, or that's what we would get?
But that is what the plan was for the committee rooms that on the second floor to replace what's there now.
Okay. All right, thanks. I just wanted to get a sense. This has been looked into. It's not like, it would be a measurable improvement. We'd get something for our money.
That's the goal. And this would let, you know, when the cafeteria addition was put on in the late 80s, it was thinking ahead of future expansions down the road. So the future expansion is what, 30 years later, 35. And whatever we're building is going to be there for the future. It's not a one-time for this legislative session or next biennium. It is for the future.
Senator
Yeah.
Mazza, you had your hand up.
Has there any thought been given, Alice, to the fact that we could leave the kitchen where it is and just have takeout food and just take the dining room or the seating room and put that into committee rooms, and people could take their food back to their committee rooms? It's most of that space is not used during the day. It's just a lunchtime, and as long as we got food available, you can get your food like other cafeterias in the state, in the state government. They don't have to sit there and eat their food. Why just take it back?
And use some of that sitting area right now and convert
There's
that
a lot
to.
of sitting area there. There's a lot of space there.
Mhm. I mean,
Just
those
you-
are options
Yeah.
that need to be looked at.
Well, that's what, I mean, you've got the space, so you get your lunch or you get your coffee and you bring it back to your committee room, or you don't have to sit at the cafeteria. Just a thought.
But the cafeteria, if you think about it, is a real place that members can see each other that don't normally see each other. And it is a place where House members meet, Senate members and senators meet House members.
I'm just looking at $25 million versus a lot
I know.
less money. That's all I'm looking at. I mean, it just
Right.
frightens me to think we're talking about $25 million for the State House.
Mhm.
One of the great difficulties, though, in this discussion is once you start talking about A, B, or C options, the number of, I don't know how to describe it, not doors opening, but the number of issues that pop up with each option becomes incredibly complex. The money that we're talking about right now is 1.5 million to just get some kind of planning out there to talk about. We're not approaching the actual building stage yet. And as we've heard constantly on this committee, by the time you get through the planning, the actual dollars that are going to be needed later on down the pike could be very different from what we would think they would be today. And so decisions down the road are going to have to be made about how much do we actually want to spend to get to where we want to be. But these dollars that, as I understand it anyway, the 1.5 million is just to get basics covered, like, can this actually be done? Put a third floor on the cafeteria. We're not at a point yet where we're making those decisions about how we're actually going to build. We're still in the planning stages. And I don't know how else to approach it other than to do it piecemeal. And at this opportune time, we happen to have federal dollars that we need to make decisions about and spend it before a given date. So I hear where you're going, Dick. There's a lot of possibilities that are still out there, but just to cover the basics, you have to start someplace. And I don't want to say no to money personally that's out there at a time when we've got it available for spending purposes.
See, that's the problem. Everybody, because this free money's coming in, everybody can't wait to spend it. And it's one of the worst things that's happened with all this extra funds coming in is they're all jumping on the bandwagon. How do we spend it? How do we spend it? And just once you go down this road, you're not going to turn back. I can tell you that. I've never seen it happen yet. This is serious. Once you make that decision, you're going to go through with the project. What size, I don't know, but you're not going to back out next year or the year after, because once you put that in the ground and you have to spend that money, so to speak, you're going to spend it.
Well, the option is to say we're not going to use any money at this point. And I'm not sure that that gets us any place other than we lose the money.
Well, you don't lose it, you spend it some other place.
So is it your belief that the State House does not need any kind of expansion? I guess that's the basic question.
Well, I just don't favor that we have to spend $25 to $30 million on the State House. They've made some changes right now to accommodate some of the committees. We need airflow circulation. We need that. We've been putting that off for years, and we all know that's a necessity. But there's got to be something that's a lot simpler than $30 million expansion. That's my feeling. That's all.
Anybody else want to kick into this conversation?
So normally, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place in my thought on this. And normally I'd be like, yeah, we don't need to spend the money. But what I fear is we'll continue to at some point, we're going to have to do an addition to the State House or do something. And every year it gets more expensive and less chance we're going to find the money. I mean, I look at, I'll just use, for example, I work in a town hall now that hasn't been touched since the 1970s. And when we got the quotes to redo it, we ended up building a brand new town hall for $5 million because eventually, the heat broke and the electric's gone, you just need to move. So at some point, I mean, it's the growing pains of our legislature. I mean, so I wish we didn't have to spend the money, but I always hear people regret that we didn't do the additions in the late 90s that we should have done when we had the surpluses and so on and so forth. So
we could use that argument with courthouses. We need courthouses throughout the state. And yet look what they're working on, their conditions.
Senator McCormick.
A little historical perspective. Several chairs ago on Senate institutions, the then chair, Senator Aluzzi, was pushing for this very plan, stressing that it was what's there now was built with the intention of holding up another story, that it was designed to do that, and that option was always there. And he was arguing that the time had come, literally over 20 years ago. I believe it was Senator Mazza who kind of put the kibosh on it then. So
well,
this
Vince
is an old.
Vince wanted more space for himself, Senator McCormick. Vince would like a suite for himself back then. So let's not forget that.
Well, I think he wanted to give Francis Horrigan and agriculture a little more space too.
Well,
same issue there too. No, he did want space for himself. It's true.
Why does that not surprise me?
Yeah, we all know that. That's a poor example to use. I'm sorry.
Well, the immediate issue before us involves $113 million worth of money that the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branches all were instructed they would be able to make a pitch for. And I don't know if you recall, but the original design of this 113 was it was supposed to be roughly split between the three divisions. And at the very last minute, the Capitol bill got changed with language that instead of dividing it, said, all three of you guys make a pitch and then we'll figure out who's going to get what at the other end of it. That was not a smart move. I did not like it at the time, said so, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. And so now you have the executive branch has come in asking for all 113. Judiciary, I can't remember where their number is. And the legislature has to do something if we're going to do anything. But all of the money has to be spent by a given period of time. I don't know what the date of that is, Alice, off the top of my head.
I think it's
26?
Yeah, 26.
So, do we want to participate in spending something in order to move the conversation forward? Or B, do we simply say, no, we don't want the money, we'll let somebody else take it? I can't think of it being any plainer than just that. And maybe I'm oversimplifying it. But the upshot is, are we going to move the conversation forward to some extent, not committing to anything in the long term about when we talk about $30 million, I don't see us committing to that, but getting the planning stages together to figure out if it's even possible to get that part of the conversation down the road is where we're at right now with this 1.5, unless I'm totally missing something.
Senator Benning.
Ingalls, yep.
So this 1.5 has been permissionable to spend. It's been authorized to spend, and it's been requested that we spend up to that to figure out what everybody's gonna do. Is that a true story?
I'm not sure I'd frame it that way. We have 113 million that's
I guess-
authorized to be spent. How
guess-
it is spent is this discussion.
I guess probably, we hear about, where I was going with it is we hear about that the cafeteria can support the second floor. Even before we even further the discussion of whether it can or cannot be, I think that we should find out of that 1.5 million, whether that cafeteria can support the second floor.
That's part of the conversation, as I understand this 1.5 million is taking into account the design and what are the possibilities. Other conversation. Dan Dickerson, I see you're on my screen. I don't know if you're actually out there listening to this.
I am
here. Institutions.
And I have a roll call, but they're dinging, so I've got to kind of put on my earbuds. I got the Zoom going for the other one. I'm at the beginning of the alphabet, so it might be quick.
We'll let you go dinging. How's that? Dan, this is usually where I would turn to Catherine and I would say, what's out there that I may be missing in the conversation, and look for some guidance on whether or not I'm not framing the question properly.
Well, first of all, I'll introduce myself. Dan Dickerson, Joint Fiscal Office. I've been tuned in. I've only been halfway listening. So I think right now the debate is it based on just what types of funding are out there, or just what is the option regarding the State House?
I am looking at 1.5 million that is on the table for conversation, that is designed literally for designing and planning in the event we are to expand. Part of that designing and planning is to determine whether or not the cafeteria still has the ability to have a floor put on top of it. There are questions in that haven't yet been answered. One of which is it still code worthy to have that additional floor put on it? We don't know the answer to that question. And part of this 1.5 million would be going to answer that question. So at the moment, our Senate Appropriations Committee is looking to get some kind of a weather report from this committee as to whether or not this 1.5 million is an appropriate expenditure at this point in time, because they want to put that into the Budget Adjustment Act. I'm still trying to get that concrete answer from the committee as to which direction they want to go, but I see it personally as either we're going to move in the direction to spend that money in that fashion, or we're just going to simply say, we don't want to spend that money, let somebody else take it. And if that's too simplified of an explanation, I need to be aware of that. And that's where I'm hoping you can kick in some.
I think where I can help you is by saying that what the House did in the budget adjustment bill is they are appropriating 1.5 million towards this project, but they also recognize that, they haven't solved the allocation of the issue of allocating this federal money. And so what they did in the budget adjustment is said, we're going to take 1.5 million of our own general fund carry forward. So this is money within the legislative branch. We're going to put it towards this purpose short term so that we can have a longer conversation during the session about whether the General Assembly feels that it's appropriate to use federal money, either in the ARPA Capital Projects Fund or potentially the ARPA State Fiscal Recovery Fund. So that's going to be a conversation throughout the session. So I think the decision for you, it's a decision of whether to spend the 1.5 million period. But I think it's also, if this is something that you're somewhat interested in, the money is there from the legislature. We're funding our own money right now to at least study what's possible. And then the conversation of, if once someone's hired, the conversation of whether to replace that general fund with federal money and then continue pursuing with federal money can take place throughout the rest of the session. So I don't think it's a decision that you have to make immediately of whether the whole project should proceed. I think it's just, if you're interested enough to spend legislative general fund money in the short term to begin the study, to begin the process, then I think you would be saying yes or no to that. Hopefully that was somewhat helpful.
Senator Miles.
So the 1.5 million is not coming out of the federal funding of 100 million. It's coming out of the general fund, you say?
In the short term, yes. And I will say that I'm the financial manager for the legislative branch. So I'm not I would prefer that ultimately at the end of the legislative session, the money comes from somewhere else, backfill what we've spent from our general fund. But yes, short term, we're spending our own money and no capital or no federal money is being spent on at least this initial phase.
That puts a new spin on it. So now we're spending our own money towards this versus this. Everybody talks about this free federal money. So now it's our own $1.5 million out of the general fund. Thank you.
So Alice, did you understand that we're actually taking our current money, hoping to backfill it with the federal money?
That was sort of my thinking, to do that as we work through the process. At the point that the general fund budget adjustment was going through, we had not received our capital bill budget adjustment. And we have done this in the past where one budget will augment the other or backfill the other. So the thinking is that maybe one part of that 1.3 million could be used to backfill that 1.5 million in general fund. The key is to get this project jump-started, and the way to get it jump-started was at least to put the money in the general fund budget adjustment, because our capital bill process would not avail that money in February or March. We would be out in May or June. But we can do maybe a backfill of that 1.5 through our budgeting process in the capital budget.
Okay. Question still boils down to, do we move towards expansion or say no? Anybody else want to weigh in on the conversation? Okay. Well,
if you want, you seem to be hungry for comments. I'll help you out. I think we've all seen our rooms be overcrowded. And there are times when people really can't move. A lot of them are lobbyists, admittedly, but there are also just citizens who are interested, and their colleagues and their administrators, and there are people trying to do business with the state. And I think we probably do need to open the place up more. At least look at the possibility. If we do nothing, we've decided not to. That's sort of a decision to do nothing. We haven't decided one way or another if we just do a little more exploration.
so you're a yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Corey, where do you want to go with it?
I think we need to do some more exploration, so I'd be a yes on it.
Russell, where do you want to go with it?
I wished it was spending $1.5 million of our own monies. I wished it was, it makes a difference. I'm gonna be a no.
Senator Mazza,
No,
I got 3-2 in favor of spending. I will let the Appropriations Committee know that vote count. So they're going to do some arguing about it themselves, and you know, I have no idea where the end result will be, but I guess that's that. Alice, thank you very much for coming by. It's the drawer in the corner that says Benning on it. If you go in there, you can find a piece of candy. The one next to the front door.
You think I need sweetening up?
Well, just don't touch that toy motorcycle in there. It's very delicate.
Don't you think? Your room is waiting for you folks to come back.
Yeah,
Senator.
we'd like to. Yes, sir.
I am starving and I need to bring these reports over to Chair Emmons. May I take a piece of candy?
Oh, you certainly may, Eric. Just be wary of that motorcycle. It's very difficult. I mean, it's delicate. That's what the word is.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being asked to come in. Thank you. And I miss seeing
Thank you.
all of you. And Dick, I miss seeing you in the committee room in the morning.
I know. I can't keep your committee straight.
I know. Well, we got a lot of new members and they need to meet you. Take
All
care.
right. So we'll see you again. Thanks much.
Okay. Thank you.
So for the YouTube audience,